Well, hello and welcome to Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn podcast. I am your host and executive producer, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. I am a certified life and career coach. And with me today is a special guest. Her name is Megan Sandwick, and she is joining us today for the first time, her first podcast. So, welcome, Megan.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jacalyn. I'm so excited to be here and just to rap with you and just to talk about what we do and how we make a difference in people's lives.
Absolutely. And there's so much to talk about. So let's get started. So you really help people in the area of productivity, staying on track and accomplishing things. Would that be correct?
That is absolutely correct. Yes. The way I look at it, and one of the founding principles that when I started working in the professional world over 20 years ago, one of the founding principles that I learned was that there is an interconnectivity between control, productivity, and self-esteem.
Hmm.
And so if you are in control of what's going on, you're able to be more productive, and it raises your self-esteem. And so this is a triquation based on Franklin Covey. And one of the things that's interesting is that it can either spiral up or spiral down. And so if you look at control, productivity, and self-esteem, and if you are aware and being intentional with them, you're able to have, your actions, your life, your mindset, everything is able to spiral up. And so I found that's a great way to be able to focus on helping people get to where they are or where they want to be.
I really love that how you're aligning it with self-esteem because we do need to feel good about ourselves. So if we're able to be productive and tie that together, that sounds like a big win. So
Absolutely.
you are the owner of Strategic Productivity Partners LLC, which is a great name because it's pretty direct, right? So you can understand. How did you start your business?
That's a great question. So I started this journey to start my business about 7 years ago when I was leaving corporate America. And when I left corporate America, I was at a point and I was kind of at a crossroads in my life at that point where while I loved what I did in corporate America and for my 20 something year career, there were certain things that I did not like anymore, or there were certain things that, as far as, just to be honest with you, some of what I call the reindeer games in corporate America, just, it was burning me out. There were things that, I was, as a deputy director operations manager, I spent so much of my time on reports and doing all these other things rather than actually providing the service that I was good at. And it was making me unhappy. And I was at a point where I'd had an ankle injury and I had not really had a chance to heal from that, and was just kind of like, all right, this is life. This is how it's going to be. I'm going to settle for this. And, I was just thinking that that's how I was going to live. And I got a wake up call. And then I also started taking better care of my body through yoga. I realized that I did need to do some healing, and that started healing me on the outside, and that brought me healing on the inside. And so during that time, I was actually fired from my job in corporate America. And it sucked, quite honestly. And I wish it had happened a different way. But one of the things that I realized is I was never going to leave on my own. I was comfortable just being like, okay, this is what my life's going to be. I can deal with this. This isn't bad. And so I was just thinking that was going to happen. And then once I started doing yoga and taking care of my body and my mind, and then I was fired, I realized, wait a minute, life can be different. And it was about 2014 when this was happening, and the remote world and freelance opportunities and project management there, I realized that what I had been doing in corporate America in brick and mortar buildings there was a whole remote world of operations and all of these services that I didn't realize. And so after getting fired from that life, I realized, okay, what's going to be, I went to control, productivity, self-esteem. And what I looked at was, okay, what can I do? And so at that point, I started working online and I started working remote. And so I started realizing, and, there were, again, principles, foundations, tools, resources that I'd used, over 25 years managing and being a supervisor operations, in all of those positions. And so I was wondering, can you use them online? Like, is there and the answer is yes, because when you think about it, self-esteem, working with people to identify resources to take control of their life so that they're increasing productivity. And so over the last 6 years, I started working as operations, online remote operations. I worked as an online remote operation manager, project manager. I worked for the platform Upwork for 2 years, where I began to realize and learn what this remote world was like, and began to learn all of like the apps and the zaps and all of those things that you could do. When I very first started 6 years ago, I was just like, so I would be frozen. And so what I realized is, wait, there's all this opportunity, and there's all this hope, and there's all these things I can do, and I don't have to have some of those same limitations in corporate America. I don't have the 37 reports a month that I'm doing. I'm able to focus on learning about operations and productivity in the remote world. And so that's when I started. And I for the first 5 years, I actually had two roles. I had contracts where I was working in operations management and project management. And then I started to build my clients, productivity clients. I started realizing that, hey, there are a lot of people who want to figure out how to make their lives easier, how to work smarter, not harder. And they're just not sure. And so that's when I started to realize that there were operations opportunities and there were productivity partner opportunities. And when I thought about it and when I was doing them, where I was the best and where I actually, when I was able to shine and smile and feel good, it was in working with people in how to be productive, how to be productive, how to take control of their lives. And so that's when I started Strategic Productivity Partners. So it's truly been a journey to figure out like what opportunities are out there and what can I do? Because when you think about it, 10 years ago, if we would have been talking 10, we would have never thought, oh, in 10 years, we're going to be recording a podcast on, there are so many changes we've had. So it's been an opportunity to realize how can I capitalize on those, and how can I be my best self so that I'm doing my best? Because when I'm doing my best, then I'm going to help people do their best.
Wow, what an interesting journey. Thank you for sharing all of that. And I think you were years ahead of your time, because look where we are today in this completely virtual world per se. And you already had all these other years experience. And Megan, something that you mentioned I think is just so inspirational and a lesson for others, is that you stayed at your job even though you could do it in your sleep probably, and you didn't want to leave, and then you got fired and it's the end of the world presumably, and maybe it was the best thing that could have happened to you, but yet we hold on to something kicking and screaming, and when it gets ripped from our arms, it's like the whole world opens up. So what are your thoughts about that?
It is absolutely true. And that's where one of the things I've realized that's important is mindset and setting expectations. So if I were to look at what I have changed about myself the most over the last, since I got fired, it was learning about, okay, so what is my mindset and what are realistic expectations and what do I want to expect now? And so it was scary. And to be honest with you, just the whole experience. And when you tell people you got fired, there's still some shame. And there's, what I'm saying? There's a lot of people who think, oh, what did you do? Or how is it horrible? And it's like, well, yeah, there was a situation that happened. But if we look at it, it was really the lifestyle change that needed to happen, And so I think it's living through the fear. It's having confidence through the fear. And it's finding moments to say, okay, I get that this is scary, and I get that I don't know what's going to happen, but I know me and I know what I've been through. And if I could do fill in the blank, like, you know what I'm saying? We've all had so many of those experiences. And that's when really began to realize, like, wait a second, it's not transactional. Life is a process. Life is a path, and it's a journey. And there isn't one single situation or thing that's going to define your entire life. It's how you respond to it. And so that's really, what I've really focused on and what I've helped other people. And kind of one interesting thing, I had a client who about a year and a half ago was fired from his job, and he sent me a message and he was talking through how scary it was. And it was a great opportunity for me to be able to say, I was fired and that's how I landed to where I am now, so it can be okay. And
Sun keeps shining.
Absolutely.
So I'm wondering, because I've thought about this, I left my career, I resigned this year, but if money wasn't in the picture, if it wasn't about the check, wouldn't we make decisions other than what we make?
Absolutely. It would be completely different, right? Because when you think about it, when we hang our decisions and all of our principles and everything on the money and on the check, we're not going to make decisions as we would if we are just living. And when you look at it, that's when you look at control, productivity, and self-esteem, it's where are you starting to make those decisions from? So just like I'm sure it was scary for you, and it's still scary, right? It doesn't change.
It doesn't change, but and you and I have talked about this, I'm happier than I've ever been, which seems kind of crazy, but yeah, I don't have that paycheck anymore. And I'm working to get it, but I don't even know that I really need the paycheck I had before, because I just feel like the trade-off, and again, I had a job that I loved too. I loved my career, but there's just something in us, right, that we feel like we want to do something else. So
Mhm.
when you work with your clients, what does that experience look like? So they find you, and by the way, let's give some contact information now. We'll give it also at the end, but how can people get in touch with you at your company?
Great question. So my company is Strategic Productivity Partner. My website is downwithspp.com. Little easier to type. So my website is downwithspp.com, and my email address is megan@downwithspp, and I'm always available, and people can absolutely look at my website. And I do have a newsletter sign up as well.
Excellent. So they can find you through your website. And then what does a typical engagement look like? Do they sign up for so many meetings with you virtually? I'm assuming you're working with people virtually now, right? Because that's you're an expert in that area.
Yes, that is a great question. Yes, I do work with people virtually. To be honest, I've never had an in-person client, and I've only met one of my clients in person once. And so it is very interesting because I've worked with people around the world. And so it is kind of, it's fun how that works out. How my work with my clients happens is generally, I do have a productivity boost package that's also on my website. And there's 3 packages there where you can pick 3, 5, or 7 sessions, and we go through very specific topics and areas. And so that can direct people to what we work on. The rest of my clients, I work with my clients on a appointment basis. So what I start doing is, we work together on an hourly basis. And what I do is, what I found is productivity is highly personalized. When you think about it, the way you like to be productive is very different than the way I probably like to be productive and my habits, right? So what I do is when I work with my clients, the first thing I do is we look at, okay, what are all of your productivity tools? We start with the first place of saying, okay, what are your productivity tools? What does your calendar look like? And what does your daily process look like? So what we do is we meet for the first time for an hour, and I have spreadsheet, we have a process that we go through where we look at what their tools are, what their projects are, and then what their desired outcome is. We look at, because when you look at it, we can look at it as, this is the way it is. I'm going to take what I can get. Here's where my productivity is right now. Or this is the way it can be. I'll work for what I want. So what I do is I work with participants to kind of a mind shift, if you will. And so there's 3 things that we work on. We work on what's the motivation. We work on what's the mindset expectations. And then we look at what are the tools. And so all 3 are connected. To be honest, we generally start with the tools because that's more tangible than working with, just starting in with a mindset. So I really look at I talk to my clients and I ask them, what is your process? What do you like and what don't you like? What do you want it to be like? And it really is a personal preference. And a lot of times the mindset comes in because we have to drop attachments, or, I heard that this person does this and they have this morning routine, so I want to do this morning routine. So what I work a lot with my participants is, okay, that's great for them. Let's look at what's great for you. Let's see what works for you. So we meet for the first time for an hour, and then we meet on a follow-up basis. It takes about 3 appointments, 3 sessions. And what we do is we set up what are their goals, what is their plan, what are their priorities, and we set up a process. It's generally a 5 to 7 step process of, okay, here's what you're doing with your email. Here's what you're going to do with your communications, including your phone, all your chats, your Slack messages, Telegram, WhatsApp. There's overwhelming these days. We look at what are your project management tools? Like, what are the tasks you need to look at today? Then we look at what is your calendar for today and what actually are you doing? And I start to set my clients up on a process of looking at their time and beginning to start calculating a little bit.
Hmm.
We start to look at, all right, so if you have 30 hours of meetings and trainings this week, and you have 20 hours of work, you realize that's 50 hours of work, right? And we just really start to look into that nitty gritty. So with my clients, it's a very personalized process where we just begin to look through what they're doing and how they're working, and then I get to learn a lot. I've had clients that say, I don't want red font, or I won't do this unless you're watching, and so for me, it's just creating a safe space where there's no judgment and there's no attachments. And the primary goal is to find what works for you to be productive. How can we take control of your productivity? What does that look like?
So it sounds like you have a really good system of helping your clients be accountable for
Yeah.
for making the commitment, first of all, and then staying on point.
Yes, and part of what it is, and it is a system, and then it turns individualized for, okay, what is the follow up, and what do it's kind of like, what do we do to set you up, and then how do we turn them into habits? And so then when I talk about mindset and motivation, that comes in when you're building the habits, because it's that you have to do it every day. Like, you have to do it every day. That's just, however it's going to work. If you're going to have a system to get stuff done and to work smarter, not harder, you have to keep at it. And so at the beginning, to be honest with you, I didn't know that I would work with clients for as long as I did, because part of me thought, well, we'll set up a system and then my clients will be done and they'll move on their happy way. But what's happened is my clients like to continue. We continue with kind of that maintenance and monitoring, and maybe I talk to them once a week or once every few weeks. I have a few clients I talk to frequently, and it's just a matter of, what do you need? I have one client this morning that he was super behind on his emails, and he has a big project, hadn't been. So I sat with him while he went through his emails, because that's what he needed to be productive today. And so that's where I can figure, all right, let's figure out how to do that. And I'm very fortunate and blessed that my clients let me into their lives in that way. They let me see and they let me be a part of the ride, if you will.
Yeah, you're like another team member, which is really great, and they're being transparent and opening themselves up to you, which is really terrific, because I think that connection they have with you also helps them be more productive, right?
Yes, absolutely. I'm able to, and that's where the strategic part comes in. And that's where my experience, having been in operations and having run contracts and having, traveled around the country implementing contracts, is, it gave me a chance to, now when I'm watching my clients' businesses, I don't know all about their businesses, but I'm watching them and I can ask questions and ask strategic questions. And so there have been many times when clients have been like, all right, I need you to help me brainstorm this, or let's figure out a solution. And so all I do is ask questions and point to resources and to expectations. And so it is pretty cool. And then it's also fun. I get to know when my clients, we work with high performers, when you think about it, right? Like, all of us, the people listening to the podcast, high performers with super high expectations.
Yes.
So it's, for me, sometimes it's a matter of looking at my clients and saying, okay, how about you log off today? You've had a really long couple of weeks. You look exhausted. It's a day when you can just log off. And that's when I feel I'm being a true productivity partner, when I'm telling them, don't work, log off, take a day off.
Right,
But
because
it's what,
it's so hard to shut down, right? Because we just, especially now during COVID, I think people have they've shifted or they've pivoted, and some people have not. I've heard people say that they still haven't left home, they're barely managing, and other people are off on new endeavors. So it is kind of interesting, but what a great time that's continuing through next year for us to be more productive, to find new habits that are more effective. So,
absolutely.
Megan, when you think about all of the offerings that you have, are you able to work with organizations as well, or is it mostly one-on-one relationships that you prefer?
Great question. I have done both. So I have worked with, mainly as a productivity partner, I have worked with individuals. When I was in operations, in remote operations, I would work with organizations. And I actually had several clients where I was actually their productivity partner and their operations manager. And so I was able to, like, for example, with one client, I hired a team of virtual assistants from the Philippines and set that up. And then once they were up and running and they were, had tasks and management and they were completing their tasks, once we set those processes up using Asana, then I was able to move more into the strategic productivity partner. And I did a lot of coaching with the executive and the owner and just kind of making sure, all right, now let's make sure you're on the right path. Because as we know, when we're working with entrepreneurs who have multiple ventures, it can be challenging to get their attention sometimes. So we worked on, okay, how can we make this a little bit easier? So I do work with individuals and organizations.
That's terrific. And I love how you share with your clients, hey, maybe today you should take the day off because you've been working so hard. So, what other tips for mental and physical wellness would you suggest for people who are out there during this whole COVID so that they can prepare themselves to be as productive as possible by doing some self-care?
That is a great question. I would say the most important thing, it truly is around mindset, mental, motivation, mindset, and expectations. So obviously things like make sure you're taking care of yourself. And depending on what, people's, stay in, restrictions are with COVID and the coronavirus, one of the things is always look at your calendar and make sure that you have time, not just for yourself, but that you not just for your business, but you also have time for yourself. One of the things I do is I color code everything so that when I look at my calendar, I know, oh, look, green business, oh, blue me. I see that there are multiple things. So one specific thing I say to clients is, and to people is, make sure that you have more than one area in your life that you're working and focusing on. Can be a challenge these days, especially if your parents at home and things like that. But find what is that 15-minute activity? What is that 20-minute? Can it be an hour? What is that? Where can you find places for yourself and then grab them and make appointments with yourself and don't cancel them because it's going to be easy to want to, but you can't. So my first, is find time for yourself, schedule appointments for yourself, and then be aware of your mindset and your expectations. And also, what is your mental playlist? Are you continuing to tear yourself down? Are you continuing to doubt? One of the most important things right now is grace and mercy with ourselves. And to realize that people are thinking, oh, I should have done all of this stuff. When you look at the big picture and you say, we're in a global pandemic right now. Our lives have all been impacted pretty drastically. So let's start there. And then let's look at what are realistic expectations I can set right now with everything going on. Not in a perfect world, not 10 years ago, not 2 years from now, but today. So I would say that the most important things, again, are motivation, mindset, making sure to schedule appointments for yourself, time for you, especially if you're living in a house full of other people. Find when that sweet spot time is. And then third, be aware of what's going on and set realistic expectations and take care of your mindset.
I love that whole idea of making an appointment with yourself. It's like make a date with yourself, right? You're your own best date.
Seriously.
And you need to give yourself permission to do that, right? That it's okay. It's necessary.
Yeah. Well, and that's where the cancellation comes in. Because, right before you could think, oh, I could spend time on work, I could do this with family. And it's like, no, you are the most important thing right now. There is nothing more important in this world than you right now. So take care of you.
Absolutely. And, at the time that we're recording this, winter is coming, regardless of where you live. And excuse the reference to Game of Thrones, but winter is definitely coming. And we need to keep ourselves strong mentally and physically. So you've given some really great tips. I appreciate that. And I really like the holistic approach that you take to your client by looking at them first as an individual person and then looking at what it is they're trying to accomplish. So I think that sounds like that resonates really well. So we are at the end of our time. Megan, can you give your contact information again? And also, are you on social media? And if so, if anything you want to give out with that?
Absolutely. And so thank you so much for allowing me to share all this information with everybody. So yes, my contact information, my website is downwithspp.com. My email address is megan@downwithspp.com. And I'm also on Twitter and Instagram, and it's at Megan's Mat. And so one of my other interests is meditation and yoga. And so you will see a lot of that, and going to the beach. You will see a lot of that on my Instagram feed as well.
And you and I are simpatico when it comes to that with the yoga and the meditation and also the beach, but it's getting cold here. So we will get together again and we will talk more about meditation and yoga and how that can be intertwined with being productive. So I look forward to interviewing you again, Megan, and I thank you so much for being here today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Jacalyn. And I do hope that everyone gets at least one thing, just one tidbit of what you can do for you. Because again, if you're in control of your productivity, it increases your self-esteem. So it's so important to be intentional about it.
And when you have really good self-esteem, you actually attract people to you, right? Because it's like, wow, look at that person, and they want to know, what are you doing that you seem so confident? I want to glean some of that off of you.
It's so true. It is. That is one of the things that is okay to share with others right now. In this world of social distancing, confidence is okay to share with everybody.
Yes, for sure. Well, Megan Sandwick, that is a wrap for today. Thank you so much for being with me for this podcast, and I'll continue to support your work.
I appreciate that.